It's a pretty simple message. Get vaccinated and you'll get... The French government's new ad is a viral hit and a bit catchier than our theme tune.
Next steps are for Australians to be in a position when they're fully vaccinated to be able to not be subject to any domestic restrictions that are put in place by state and territory governments.
As of this week, any Australian who's been fully vaccinated can get a digital certificate saying so. But right now, it doesn't give you a pass for lockdowns or border closures. Some double-dose people are keen to know when that will change, like 23-year-old Ed Cook, who snapped up vaccines that otherwise would have gone to waste.
And I've got, family who are sort of split across Australia and different states. So my sister's in London. We've all been sort of separated by border closures and things. So, anything that I could kind of do to protect myself, my family, and then also help, the community return to sort of normal was a huge priority for me.
Border closures.
Borders shut. Some kind of exemption could have really helped fully vaccinated Queensland couple Mo and Sarah Haydar. After arriving home from Qatar, they had an emergency birth, but were separated from their newborn because they had to return to quarantine.
Now, it's not safe to take those next steps right now. It's not. But we'll keep working on what those next steps are.
And one big step will be distributing more jabs. Remember, we've still only got 2.6% of the country fully vaxxed.
It'd be a great incentive for people, to know that they aren't going to get stuck in border closures, and that'd be really great for businesses as well who, suddenly have, borders put up and all their reservations cancelled. But I don't think that's really feasible until you get to a point where enough people are eligible to get vaccinated.
Well, Professor Catherine Bennett is the Chair of Epidemiology at Deakin University and she joins us now. Professor, at what point could we realistically make exemptions for people carrying a vaccine certificate?
If we're looking at our interstate borders, for example, it is a combination of background vaccination rates and whether a person's vaccinated that gives you that kind of risk equation that people will want to see. But in the shorter term, there are probably some options we could be looking at, like if someone is vaccinated, that they might be able to cross a border, even out of a red zone, as long as they test before and maybe test after. And so there could be ways we could combine it with permit systems so that it recognises people are at lower risk of both getting the virus and of passing it on, even if they do pick the virus up.
Be that as it may, as an epidemiologist, in your professional opinion, how important is it to get an election out of the way before you can start making those sort of exemptions?
Well, as an epidemiologist, what I can say is that with an election, at the end of the day, it's all about the numbers, and that's the same for vaccination rollouts as well. So let's hope they're both pointing in the same direction.
Beautifully avoided. You should go into politics.
Very diplomatically answered there, Professor. Do you think this creates a bit of an inequality between those that might have the certificate and those who don't, though?
Well, the reality is there is a difference in the risk that someone has of both getting the virus and of passing it on. So I think, the vaccine certificate's just capturing that bit of information and allowing us to factor that into our public health orders and our restrictions and our leniency as well, because we're actually just trying to manage that risk balance. So I do think it's important that everyone has access to the vaccine before we take too many steps. But at the same time, I think once you're vaccinated, it does in fact put you in a different risk position, and we should recognise that.
And what happens, Professor, to the people who can't get vaccinated, say, for medical issues? I mean, should they have an addendum that they might be able to attach to that certificate that shows that?
Look, that's right, and I think that's what we'll be looking at. So if you can't be vaccinated for some reason, just now, if you can't wear a mask for some reason, you're not penalised for doing that. And there would be relatively few people who fit into those categories, but important that they're not disadvantaged, and at the same time we still manage that risk with testing or other things that might be in the mix until we do have sufficient numbers in the population vaccinated to relax rules for everyone.
Professor, before we let you go, on the flip side of that, do you think these exemptions might incentivise people to hurry up and actually get vaccinated?
Look, I think that's a good point. I think it really does highlight that you're reducing your personal risk and risk to others. So I think that both reinforces that message and in the process gives people an incentive. So I think that's only can be a good thing as we try and encourage people to step up and take advantage of this free vaccine on offer, particularly when we do have places that still aren't at capacity for offering the vaccine. So let's do it, because I think recognising lower risk, managing that risk in a way that recognises people who've stepped up and had the vaccine sooner rather than later will be a good incentive.
Professor Catherine Bennett, always great to get your expert advice on all of this. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
From expert opinions to in-depth analysis and reporting, the Project YouTube brings you the biggest stories from Australia and around the globe. Hit the subscribe button now for news delivered straight to your feed.